Jai Om Vishnupad Paramahamsa Parivrajikacharya Ashtatarashata Shri Srimad His Divine Grace Abhay Sharnaravinda Bhaktivedanta Swami Srila Prabhupada Ki Jai. Jai Om Vishnupad Paramahamsa Parivrajikacharya Ashtatarashata Shri Srimad His Divine Grace Srila Bhakti Siddhanta Saraswati Thakur Maharaj Prabhupada Ki Jai. Grantaraj Srimad Bhagavatam Ki Jai. Samaveta Gaur Bhakta Vrinda Ki Jai. Jai Nitai Gaur Premanande. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. This morning we are reading from Srimad Bhagavatam, Canto 3, Chapter 13, The Appearance of Lord Varaha, Text 35. Rupam tavaitan nanudushkritatmanam. Rupam tavaitan nanudushkritatmanam. Durdarshanam deva yad advaratmakam. Durdarshanam deva yad advaratmakam. Chandamsi yasya tvachibarhi romasva. Chandamsi yasya tvachibarhi romasva. Ajam drishitva angrishu chaturhotram. Ajam drishitva angrishu chaturhotram. Rupam tavaitan nanudushkritatmanam. Durdarshanam deva yad advaratmakam. Chandamsi yasya tvachibarhi romasva. Ajam drishitva angrishu chaturhotram. Mataji's.
Yasya
Translation, purport by His Divine Grace, A.C. Bhaktivedanta Swami Srila Prabhupada Ki Jai. Translation, O Lord, your form is worshipable by performances of sacrifice, but souls who are simply miscreants are unable to see it. All the Vedic hymns, Gayatri and others are in the touch of your skin. In your bodily hairs is the kusha grass. In your eyes is the clarified butter, and in your 4 legs are the 4 kinds of fruitive activities. Purport. There is a class of miscreants who are known in the words of Bhagavad Gita as Vedavadi, or so-called strict followers of the Vedas. They do not believe in the incarnation of the Lord, what to speak of the Lord's incarnation as the worshipable hog. They describe worship of the different forms or incarnations of the Lord as anthropomorphism. In the estimation of Srimad Bhagavatam, these men are miscreants. And in Bhagavad Gita 7.15, they are called not only miscreants, but also fools and the lowest of mankind. And it is said that their knowledge has been plundered by illusion due to their atheistic temperament. For such condemned persons, the Lord's incarnation as the gigantic hog is invisible. These strict followers of the Vedas who despise the eternal forms of the Lord may know from Srimad Bhagavatam that such incarnations are personified forms of the Vedas. Lord Boar's skin, his eyes, and his bodily hair holes are all described here as different parts of the Vedas. He is therefore the personified form of the Vedic hymns and specifically the Gayatri mantra. Om Jnanatimmirandasya Jnananjana Shalakaya Chakshunamritam Yena Tasmai Shri Gurave Namaha Shri Chaitanya Manobishtam Stapitam Yena Bhutale Swayam Rupa Kadamayam Dadati Swapadantikam Vandeham Shri Guru Shri Utapadakamalam Shri Gurun Vaishnavamscha Shri Rupam Sagrajatam Sahagana Raghunathanvitam Tam Sajivam Sadvaitam Savadutam Parijana Saitam Krishna Chaitanya Devam Shri Radha Krishna Padan Sahagana Lalita Shri Vishakhan Vitamscha. He Krishna Karuna Sindhu Dinabandho Jagatpate Gopesha Gopika Kanta Radha Kanta Namostute Tapta Kanchana Gaurangi Radhe Vrindavaneshwari Vrishabhanu Sute Devi Pranamami Haripriye Vansha Kalpatrubhyascha Kripa Sindhu Bhyevacha Patitanam Pavanebhyo Vaishnavebhyo Namo Namaha. Jai Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Gadadhar Srivasari Gaura Bhaktivinoda. Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama 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 Hare Hare. So we have an important announcement. 2, actually. Today is the appearance day of Shri Advaita Acharya Prabhu. Advaita Acharya Prabhu Ki Jai. And also, if you would have seen, for those of you who are on Mayapur TV, in the altar we have a Srimad Bhagavatam set. Sorry, Chaitanya Charitamrita set. So already Chaitanya Charitamrita is very special, but it's there on the altar and it's personally blessed by Shri Shri Radha Gopinath, Jagannath Baladev Subhadra, and Shri Shri Gauranitai. But today especially, we can see a beautiful portrait there of Advaita Acharya, who is loudly calling for Lord Chaitanya to descend to this mature world. Prema Hunkara, it's mentioned in the Chaitanya Charitamrita. So Hunkara refers to loudly calling, but not like in a very annoying way. He was doing it full of love, just like a little child calls out for his or her mother, for love, attention, and for protection. So this Chaitanya Charitamrita set has been also blessed by Advaita Acharya today. And on this special occasion, this Maha Chaitanya Charitamrita set could be yours on a first come, first served basis. So if you'd like to take home the Maha Chaitanya Charitamrita set, which is there on the altar this morning, you can contact Ganesham Govinda Prabhu as quickly as possible. Otherwise, if you're nearby and you're coming to the temple, then you can go straight to the book table at the front, to the receptionist, and you can approach the devotee over there. So please take this opportunity very quickly while it's still there. I think we already distributed a Chaitanya Charitamrita set during the Sunday feast just a couple of days back in the same way. So I think we're going to be doing this up until Gaura Purnima comes, so please take advantage. And if you don't have a Chaitanya Charitamrita set, then please avail yourself of this opportunity. Okay, so yesterday Bhav Vibhushan Prabhu was talking about how Lord Krishna is Akila Rasamrita Murti, how he's tasting rasa. And he was mentioning that all of us, we like the feeling of climbing to the top of a cliff, going to a swimming pool, climbing up the ladder, and just standing there on the edge of the diving board. And that feeling of just diving, that exhilarating feeling of just diving down into the water, splashing, going in. You can see little kids do that all the time, especially those who are growing up in the villages. I remember my mother telling me that when she was growing up, she was growing up in a colony, like a block of units, and they had a well there. And all the kids, they would jump into the well. And actually, she was mentioning there were some serious accidents that happened there, but the kids didn't care. The parents would always try to tell them not to do that, but especially during the rainy season, the well would fill up, so the kids would just dive into it. It's a huge well, really big well. So Lord Varaha is doing exactly the same thing. Just like we are persons, and we like to enjoy in certain ways, we like to taste rasa, and that's because we're part and parcels of Krishna, Lord Varahadev, who's also doing the same thing. So Prabhu was mentioning how he's diving into the water, the Garbhodaka ocean, splashing about, he's tasting the rasa there, and the sages, the great rishis from the higher planetary systems, now that they've realized that indeed he is the Supreme Personality of Godhead, they're glorifying him, and Prabhu is likening that example to a soccer player scoring a goal and 50, 60,000 people in the stadium getting up and cheering. So naturally the person who scores the goal becomes very ecstatic. He takes off his shirt and he whirls it around. And he's in ecstasy. So in the same way, Lord Varahadev is also tasting that ecstasy as well. Now, Bhagavatam mentions that actually Krishna doesn't want the conditioned souls to come to this material world. But Krishna, being the prime opportunist and retaining his position as the supreme enjoyer, the point is raised that the way he does that is that he still comes to fulfill his desires. Krishna has a chivalrous attitude, virya ras, and he does that by coming into the mature world and fighting with either his devotees, like Hiranyakshipu, who were originally Jay and Vijay, like as is the case here, and just demons in general. We learn from the Bhagavad Gita that this is one of his purposes in coming to the mature world, to annihilate the miscreants and to protect the devotees, and to establish the principles of religion. So in this way, Lord Varahadev is coming, and one thing I wanted to mention is the Supreme Personality of Godhead is unknown to the miscreants. Like here Srila Prabhupada is saying that in Bhagavad Gita 7.15, miscreants but also fools and the lowest of mankind, and it is said that their knowledge has been plundered by illusion due to the atheistic temperament. So people who are overcome by Maya, they're unable to understand Krishna, but also pure devotees of Krishna are also unable to understand Krishna's supremacy. And we see this in the 12th canto of Srimad Bhagavatam. Maharaj Parikshit is very sad to hear from Shukadev Goswami in the previous canto, in the 11th canto, about the Maushalya Leela, about Krishna's leaving, Krishna's departing from the material vision. So he becomes very sad and depressed. Then, thinking that Krishna is just like his relative, he doesn't understand Krishna's supremacy. It's overshadowed by his premanjana, right? His eyes are tinged with the salve of love. Just like a mother, even if her child becomes a great president or something like that, the mother is still going to treat the president of that country just as her child. So in the same way, Parikshit Maharaj is overcome by that love. So Shukadeva Goswami consoles him by explaining to him that Krishna has not actually passed away. Krishna is still there. He's not in our vision right now. Madrishti Gochara Prabhu Prabhupada Swamin. It's mentioned, like one of Srila Prabhupada's disciples, Shastri, I forgot his first name, but he was one of the Sanskrit editors of Srila Prabhupada's books, and he wrote the Srila Prabhupada Stotram, Krishneka Ched, I forgot. But the last line says, when will Srila Prabhupada come within my vision? Madrishti Gochara Prabhu Prabhupada Swamin. So, in the same way, Parikshit Maharaj, Krishna's pure devotees, are also yearning and hankering for Krishna to come within their sight. But when Krishna leaves, that Vipralamba is there, just like my Guru Maharaj, he gives the example that he was in a car in some European country, and he was trying to explain to the devotees there about Krishna's separation and how the devotees feel in Krishna's absence. So the sun was shining very brightly through the window of the car, and then as soon as he started trying to explain to them about Vipralamba, that mood, all of a sudden the sun went behind the clouds. And the devotees felt the absence of the sun more when it went behind the clouds than when it was shining through the window. So then he used that example to explain to these devotees in the car there. So sometimes we can better appreciate Krishna's presence in his absence. And I have a materialistic example, but it demonstrates the point. For example, when I was in high school, everyone knows Michael Jackson. He's a really famous pop singer, had been for decades, top of the charts, really nice songs. And when I was growing up, I used to listen to his songs here and there, but it wasn't until he actually passed away that his popularity grew even more, right? And I personally found that as well. In my case, everyone started to talk about him, and then I started to listen to his songs, and I even fell in love with some of his songs, and I put it on my MP3 player and was listening, Billie Jean and all that, but I don't want to get into that. Now, so Shukadeva Goswami tells Parikshit Maharaj that Krishna, even though he has disappeared, he's not an ordinary person, he's still there. And he has not succumbed to death as ordinary people would. He reminds Parikshit Maharaj, first of all, he says, don't forget that when you are still in the womb of your mother, Uttara, Krishna himself came there and you got the darshan of Krishna. Like we were discussing the prayers of Queen Kunti, and there it's mentioned, Srila Prabhupada mentions, elaborates on the purport, or it's there in one of the verses that Queen Kunti is mentioning that Krishna, you're there outside. I'm seeing you outside. I'm speaking to you. You're there seated on the chariot. I'm speaking to you. But at the same time, I also got the vision of you going into the womb of Uttara and saving Parikshit Maharaj as well. So you're both inside and outside. Bahir Nrsimha, Hridaye Nrsimha. So the pure devotee can have that vision. So Parikshit Maharaj got that vision. And afterwards, as we know, he took birth, and that's why he was called Parikshit, otherwise his name was Vishnurata. So he was always examining Pariksha, where is Krishna? Shri Shukadeva Goswami reminded him that Krishna is not an ordinary person because of this example. Secondly, he says that Jara, who is the hunter, who apparently was the cause of Krishna's disappearance. Right? Jara comes and he has the arrow, which was made by the the iron which appeared in under Samba's clothing, and then they were cursed by the Brahmanas and the rishis there in Prabhasa Kshetra. So he takes that arrow, mounts it to his bow, and he shoots, and it goes into Krishna's heel. And apparently this is one of the causes for why Krishna disappeared. So he mentions that actually, even though Jara apparently dealt death to Krishna, even though Krishna didn't die, still Krishna is not an ordinary person. Why? Because Krishna delivered Jara to go back to Vaikuntha. So even someone who apparently was the cause of his death, Krishna actually delivered that person so that Jara went back to Vaikuntha. Third thing, he says, is that Lord Shiva deals death to the messengers of Yamaraj, who is the Lord of Death. He decides what happens to the conditioned soul after the conditioned soul passes away from the mature body. So we all know the story of Usha and Aniruddha, Krishna's grandson, Aniruddha, how he falls in love with Usha. And then Usha is the daughter of Banasur, who is a great devotee of Lord Shiva. Banasur has 1,000 arms, and as soon as Banasur finds out that Aniruddha, one of the Yadavas, is there in his capital, and he's having a relationship with my daughter, he gets very angry. So then he calls for Lord Shiva to come, and then Kartikeya comes, and then Lord Ganesh comes, and they have their army, and then the Yadavas come, headed by Krishna and Balaram, and there's a big fight. And as we know, Lord Shiva releases the Shiva Jwara weapon. And then Krishna releases the Vishnu Jwara weapon. And there's a big fight between these two weapons. And then the Vishnu Jwara weapon comes out victorious. And that's another reason that Shukadev Goswami gives to Parikshit Maharaj to console him. So in this way, Krishna is inconceivable. And as Srila Prabhupada is mentioning here, he's not easily understood. For miscreants, namam dishkriti namuda prapadyanti naradama mayaya apritagyana asuram bhavam arshita. Krishna holds the right and the prerogative to reveal himself to the people that he wants to reveal himself. So I asked the question to a devotee that Lord Varaha came out from the nostril of Lord Brahma, and he grew to an inconceivable size. And people saw him doing such an amazing thing, but they couldn't understand until Lord Varaha roared. I think the same word is mentioned, hunkara, as well. He roared. And when he roared, then people could understand that he's the Supreme Personality of Godhead. And Lord Nrsimhadev did the same thing. So we may think that we can understand Krishna when he actually speaks. Like Prabhupada says, one can identify a foolish person. One cannot identify a foolish person unless and until a foolish person speaks. So one may think in the same way that we can identify the Supreme Personality of Godhead when he speaks. But we have the practical example that Lord Krishna has spoken the Bhagavad Gita. Right? He's spoken the Bhagavad Gita, but most people can't understand the Bhagavad Gita. So the understanding should be that we can't understand Krishna in any way from our own endeavor. The only way we can understand Krishna is if Krishna within our heart allows us to understand him. So the axiom or the principle you could say is that we are the limited, Krishna is the unlimited, right? So the axiom you could say, the principle you could say is that the limited, us, the limited cannot understand the unlimited unless the unlimited reveals himself to the limited. So the limited is always dependent on the unlimited. So just as Lord Varahadev is calling out loudly, it's mentioned in the Bhagavad Gita, Tasya sanjanayam harsham kuru vriddha pitamaha simhanadam vinodyacha shankam dadmo pratapavan. Before the fight began, actually before the Bhagavad Gita was spoken by Lord Krishna, Duryodhan, he went up to Dronacharya And he sort of, in a diplomatic way, reminded Dronacharya, hey, look, the other side is very strong. It has such great fighters. He listed some of the fighters, and he said, Drishtadyumna is there. And remember, Dronacharya, you've taught Drishtadyumna how to even kill you. So you have to be in the proper form, be alert. And seeing that Duryodhana was a little bit weak-hearted, you could see some doubt in Duryodhana. It's mentioned that Pitamaha, Bhishmadev, he actually sounded his conch shell. And the purpose of that was to give some solace and satisfaction and comfort to Duryodhana. But then, when the Pandavas sounded their conch shells, Hridayani Vyadarayat, it's mentioned that their conch shells, they totally shattered the hearts of all the soldiers on the Kuru side. So this sound vibration is very interesting. It instills fear in the miscreants, and the same sound vibration instills knowledge and comfort and solace within the devotees. So it was through this sound vibration that Advaita Acharya, today's, as I mentioned, it's his appearance day, he called Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu to descend down into this mature world. Prema Hunkara, I was mentioning, loud calls imbued with love. So Advaita Acharya is one of the three Prabhus. If you see the picture of the Panchatattva standing, the traditional picture of the Panchatattva, Lord Chaitanya is there, and then to one side you have Nityananda Prabhu and Advaita Acharya Prabhu. So the three Prabhus, they stand on one side, and then on the other side of Lord Chaitanya you have Shakti Tattva. Just like here we have Shri Shri Radha Gopinath, and to Gopinath's right side stands Srimati Radharani, who is the supreme energy of Krishna. So similarly, to Lord Chaitanya's right side stands the supreme energy of Lord Chaitanya, who is Gadadhar Pandit. And then another aspect of his energy, which is Tathastha Shakti, Narada Muni. So Lord Chaitanya on one side stands the Purusha Tattva, Nityananda Prabhu and Advaita Acharya Prabhu, and on the other side of Lord Chaitanya, as is the case with Radha Krishna, Radha Gopinath, stands the Shakti Tattva, which is Krishna's internal potency, Lord Chaitanya's internal potency, Gadadhar Pandit, as well as his marginal potency is Tathastha Shakti, Srivas Thakur. So Panchatattvatmakam Krishna Bhakta Rupa Swarupakam Bhakta Avatara. So Advaita Acharya represents Bhakta Avatar. Lord Chaitanya is Krishna himself. Then Nityananda Prabhu is his expansion, his immediate expansion. And then you have his plenary portion, or an avatar, which is known as Advaita Acharya. And then we have the energy of Krishna, and then finally we have the devotee of Krishna. So these are the 5 tattvas which combinedly make up the Supreme Personality of Godhead. Krishna Guru Bhakta Shakti, Avatar Prakash, Echai Rupa, Krishna Karena Vilas. It's mentioned in the Chaitanya Charitamrita. Whenever Krishna comes, Srila Prabhupada would make the point, whenever Krishna comes, he never comes alone. I was listening, who was it? It was a lecture by my Guru Maharaj, Devaramita Maharaj. He was mentioning that the devotees never like to see pictures of Krishna by himself. At least there should be a cow there licking Krishna's foot, or a peacock there in the background somewhere, some parrots in a tree or something like that. But the devotees of Krishna always like to see Krishna with his devotees being served by his devotees. So Advaita Acharya, in a very humble mood, although he is Krishna himself, a plenary expansion of Krishna, Dipayachireva hi dashantanam abhyupeta, dipayate vivrata hetu samana dharma. Yastadrageva hi Vishnu Tayabhibhati Vande Govindamadi Purusham Tamaham Bhajami. So Prabhupada gives the example that you have the original candle, and from there other candles are lit. So this is the example of plenary portion. Plenary means that it's secondary, It's coming from an original source, just like a candle which is lit from an original candle, but it retains the same brilliance as the original candle. So Advaita Acharya has the same brilliance, the same potency as Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, but because he's a servant of Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, he doesn't exhibit, purposely he doesn't exhibit. Now, Advaita Acharya is calling down Lord Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, and he is described as being Mahavishnu. Now, if we see Krishna Leela, let's not forget that even in Krishna Leela, Advaita Acharya called down Chaitanya Mahaprabhu as well. If you read the Krishna book, towards the end of Krishna book, you'll find that Mahavishnu purposely was kidnapping the sons of the Brahmana, right, in Dwarka. And then in that way, Mahavishnu wanted to take darshan of Lord Krishna. So he used this as a ploy to take darshan, to see Lord Krishna, and to invite him to his abode. In the same way here, we see Advaita Acharya is advented here on this earth. So he is calling out for Lord Chaitanya to descend and come to the earth planet, to start this Harinam Sankirtan, the Yuga Dharma for this present age. Now, a technical point is that sometimes Advaita Acharya is referred to as Mahavishnu, and sometimes he's referred to as Sadashiva. Right? So sometimes an incarnation of Sadashiva, sometimes a Mahavishnu. Now, Srila Prabhupada mentions in conversations that Sadashiva and Mahavishnu are two aspects, roughly speaking, of the same personality. And that personality, on the whole, is Mahavishnu. It's just a difference in the functionality. For example, there's two different types of causes. There's the nimitta karana and the upadhan karana. Karana means cause. Sarva karana, karanam. The cause of all causes. Karana means cause. Nimitta karana, Srila Prabhupada translates that as being efficient cause. And upadhan karana refers to the material cause. So basically, there's the original cause and then there's the immediate cause. The immediate cause is considered to be a material cause, and I'll give you an example. And the efficient cause is considered to be a cause which is separate, it's distant. So for example, if it's a rainy day and I go out and I'm walking to North Sydney Station and I slip and I fall and I break my back. I hope it doesn't happen, but if that happens, then the immediate cause would be that the floor is wet. That's the upadhan karma. That's the immediate cause. But actually the efficient cause, the cause which is distant away, is the fact that it's raining. The clouds are raining. So because it's raining, that's why I slipped. It wasn't actually because the floor is wet. Of course, that's a reason, but it's the immediate reason. But the distant reason is that. Srila Prabhupada would give the example of the electricity coming out from the socket. So you plug in your mobile phone to charge your mobile phone. Now you say that the immediate cause for my phone charging is the electricity which is coming out of the socket. That's the upadhan karana. But the efficient cause, the original cause, this is separate and distant cause, or the transcendental cause, is that there's a person in some power plant several kilometers away, and that person is making the electricity go through all the systems and come to your power point so that you can charge your phone. So in the same way, the Upanishads explain two verses, Sa Aikshata and Sa Ima Loka Asrijata. These two verses explain Sadashiva and Mahavishnu. Sa Aikshata means Lord Krishna glances at his creation. And by his glance, he activates the creation. Right? And then Sa-ima loka asrijata means that from Krishna comes all these lokas, these andas, these brahmandas. And we see in Mahavishnu, from his bodily pores, are coming all of the brahmandas, all of the universes. Right? So this verse, Sa-ima loka asrijata, refers to Mahavishnu. And Aikshata refers to Sadashiva. Because who is Sadashiva? When Mahavishnu glances at the pradhan and he activates it, then the pradhan, which is, you could say, like the inert material energy, actually starts to work. The cause behind that is Sadashiva. So when Mahavishnu, he's the original person, he's the efficient cause, when he decides to glance at Maya Devi to activate the Mahatattva, that activation function, that glancing function, is referred to as Sadashiva, is referred to as Shambhu. When it actually contacts the material energy, it's referred to Shambhu or Lord Shiva. So in this way, Advaita Acharya is sometimes referred to as Mahavishnu, that great personality from whose bodily pores all the universes are coming from, or he's also referred to as Sadashiva when Mahavishnu decides to glance at the material energy. So this is a technical point. So it was by Advaita Acharya's great despondency, because in Advaita Bhavan in Shantipur, he used to hold, just like in Shiva Sangan, great, performances of Kirtan, of Harinam Sankirtan, and devotees would come and listen to Bhagavatam classes, Krishna Katha. But the Vaishnavas were very sad and despondent, because all this was going on, this pure Krishna consciousness was going on only within Advaita Acharya's house. There were not many pure devotees around. Like I heard one devotee say that it's Krishna saying in the Bhagavad Gita, Vedesya Sarva Ahame Vedya, Vedanta Krit Vedavit Eva Chaham. I am the purpose of the Vedas and the compiler of the Vedas. And through all the Vedas, I am to be known. Now, Navadvip was a seat of Vedanta. It was a seat of Vedic education. There were Chaturvedis, there were traveling preachers like Keshava Kashmiri coming through, apparently knowing all the four Vedas. But they knew everything about the Vedic culture except for the conclusion of the Vedic culture, which is Krishna. So in this way, the Vaishnava is very sad. And so, Advaita Acharya is a tag team. Advaita Acharya was calling Mahaprabhu by his loud calls, as well as offering Ganga Jal, the water of the Ganges, and Tulsi leaves to the Shaligram Shila. And in another place, Haridas Thakur was also submitting himself and appealing for Lord Chaitanya to come by constant chanting of the Hare Krishna Maha Mantra. So we see these two things, even Srila Prabhupada emphasized as well. We see Pancharatrika Vidhi, right, deity worship, as well as chanting Hare Krishna, which is Bhagavad Vidhi as well. And when Mahaprabhu actually comes, then at one point when he was surrounded by all the devotees, he started yelling out, Nara, 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 which is another name for Advaita Acharya. And he says that, I was peacefully sleeping on the ocean of milk. But the loud calls of Advaita Acharya, they penetrated the coverings of the material universe. So, Golokera Premadana Harinam Sankirtana, this transcendental sound vibration can penetrate through anything. The layers of the universe, material coverings of the universe, which only Sudarshan Chakra could break through to allow Krishna and Arjuna to pass. So transcendental sound vibration can also pass through. So Advaita Acharya's calls, his chanting of the holy name, passed through, and it apparently disturbed, not disturbed, but Mahaprabhu was pleased. He was lying there in the ocean of milk, and he got up from his slumber, his mystic slumber, from his yoga nidra, and he thought to himself, my devotee is calling me, I must descend. Right? The same way Krishna came down when Lord Brahma was appealing to him. So I'll just recount one story, and then we're almost out of time. The mood of relationship that Advaita Acharya had with Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu was dasya, of course. He always saw himself as a servant of Lord Chaitanya, but it was also imbued with sakhya, with friendship. Now, with Nityananda Prabhu, he was also considering himself to be a servant of Lord Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, but he also considered himself in the parental affection as well. This was different. This was the distinction in terms of the moods between Nityananda Prabhu and Advaita Acharya. Nityananda's mood of dasya was imbued with vatsalya, parental, whereas Advaita Acharya's mood of dasya was imbued with sakya. Now, Advaita Acharya was a devotee, was a disciple of Madhavendra Puri, who is the spiritual master of Lord Chaitanya's spiritual master, Ishwara Puri. So because of that, Lord Chaitanya always used to treat Advaita Acharya with great respect. So these two moods that they had, Advaita Acharya and Mahaprabhu, they juxtaposed each other. They contradicted each other. Mahaprabhu wanted to treat Advaita Acharya as his master, and Advaita Acharya wanted to treat Chaitanya Mahaprabhu as his master. Even though, you could say, in position-wise, he deserved respect from Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu because of his being on the same level as his spiritual master. So, Advaita Acharya devised a plot so that Mahaprabhu could chastise him. So, actually, this would happen on two instances, actually. The first famous instance, as you probably know, is Advaita Acharya started to purposely teach his students the Yoga Vasishta, which is an impersonal text. And Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu got very upset that Advaita Acharya, such a great Vaishnava, was doing that. Now, why was he called Advaita Acharya? Because his Advaita means non-different. So he's non-different from Krishna. And Acharya means that he's the proponent of Krishna consciousness. But here we have Advaita Acharya teaching Advaita philosophy, monistic philosophy, Mayavad philosophy. So Mahaprabhu got very disturbed, and it's explained that he came and he actually started to physically beat Advaita Acharya. And what did Advaita Acharya feel? He felt great ecstasy. Because Advaita Acharya used to, it's mentioned, he would just be peacefully sitting down very quietly, and all of a sudden, because of his ecstatic emotions, he would start leaping and jumping in the air, saying, I'm a servant of Lord Chaitanya, I'm a servant of Lord Chaitanya, I'm a servant of his devotees, I'm a servant of his devotees. And he would be in such ecstasy, jumping around here and there, and the next moment he would just be quiet and sit down again. So in this way, devotees don't like to excessively demonstrate their ecstasy outside. They like to keep it within. That's mentioned in the 4th chapter of the Bhagavad Gita as well. That this ecstasy that comes through cultivating transcendental knowledge and bhakti, it's relished within by the devotee. And another instance when Advaita Acharya relished the chastisement. This was not directly him, but it was through, I think it was one of his servants. His name was Kamalakanta Vishwas. So apparently Advaita Acharya had a debt of something like 300 rupees to the local zamindar, local king or something like that. And his servant Kamalakanta Vishwas made this publicly known. And Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu got very upset. And Kamalakanta Vishwas said, I don't want to see Kamalakanta Vishwas ever again. And why did he chastise him? He said, Advaita Acharya is the Supreme Personality of Godhead. How can Krishna, the Supreme Personality of God, have a debt to anyone? How is it possible? So when Chaitanya Mahaprabhu chastised Kamalakanta Vishwas, and Kamalakanta Vishwas told Advaita Acharya about what happened and how Mahaprabhu was not going to see him, he expected Advaita Acharya to sympathize with him. But Advaita Acharya in that instance also started dancing in ecstasy. Oh, you're so fortunate that you got chastised by Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu. When will I get that chastisement from Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu? So today is a great opportunity. Of course, the appearance days of any great Acharya, any great personality in our line, it serves as a great opportunity for us to approach them directly and beg for their blessings and their mercy. So today we can go up to Advaita Acharya we can beg him to just, as his calls, his prema hunkara, endeared Lord Chaitanya to descend. In the same way, may Lord Chaitanya descend by the mercy of Advaita Acharya within our hearts, which are just like the darkness of Kali Yuga. They're just like caverns, right? As it says in the Bhagavad Gita, that Krishna will shine within our hearts like the torchlight of knowledge, right? So in the same way we can pray to Advaitacharya to please himself descend in our hearts, and also for him to appeal to Lord Chaitanya so that he may also, Krishna may also appear fully within our hearts. So thank you very much. If there's any questions, comments. Okay. Jagat Guru Srila Prabhupada ki jai. Grantaraj Srimad Bhagavatam ki jai. Sri Advaitacharya Prabhu ki jai. And please do not forget about the Chaitanya Charitamrita set on the altar. If anyone would like to take it, please take it. Okay, Gaur Premanande. Hari Hari Bol.